Hello and welcome to another episode of Strong Collectors Comics. My name is Jordan, and I am joined today, as always, by my plucky co-host slash sidekick, Dakota. And today, we're going to be talking about the Spider-Verse, specifically why I'm sick and tired of it, Dakota. Now, don't get me wrong, the original Spider-Verse comics I thought were cool.
Mm-hmm.
I also enjoyed the Spider-Verse movies, the first one and the second one. However, where does it stop? And have we unleashed something that is really kind of just getting out of control? So I had this thought recently, Dakota, because they had a advertisement for like the one-shot comic they put out, and it's like, this is the next year in Spider-Man stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a picture of Spider-Man in the center, Peter Parker, and there's like 10 other Spider people around him. Which I get it. You know, I think they've introduced a lot of interesting characters. However, there was a moment looking at that where I'm like, we kind of lost the plot of Spider-Man. Because I think, in my mind, Spider-Man's Peter Parker. I think Miles was like a cool addition, and I think it's fun to see these other characters. But it almost dilutes, for me, what makes Spider-Man cool when you've got 50 other versions of them, each getting their own comic book now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Am I out of line there, Dakota?
No, I agree. And I think more so for me, like, sure, all right, Spider-Verse was cool, and we liked it, so they're just going to keep rolling with that and bleed that until it's dry.
Mm-hmm.
But then it goes to the next, and we've got the Batman verse, and now we've got the Venom verse, and the death of the Venom verse, and the resurrection of the Venom verse, and the Wolverine verse, and there's too many. I think too many verses. It was a great concept. It was a great concept, and I liked it. But why can't anybody over at Marvel or DC come up with an original idea and do something else?
Right, yeah, that kind of drove me nuts when I've been hearing about the Venomverse, and I'm like, okay, they're doing something like Interstellar with Donny Cates Venom, and I'm like, all right, and then, it was like Venomverse, and then, like you said, there was Death of the Venomverse, and I'm like, okay, and then we're
finally getting away from it.
I'm like, yeah, all right, let's wrap that up. What else can we do with Venom? And it's like, Psych, Return or Rebirth of the Venomverse. I'm like, you literally just killed it last year. Like, you can't even like let that concept just sit for like 5 minutes. You're like, we're just kidding, we're back. And there was an ad, same thing with like 8 different Venom. I kid you not. Sounds like I'm making this up, dude. But there's like Venom. Like, okay, Eddie Brock, I got it. His son Dylan. I'm like, okay, they created a symbiote, whatever. And you got the other symbiotes, but literally they're like ones we'd make up. It's like She-Hulk Venom, Black Widow Venom, Nightcrawler Venom, like, it's like Uncle Ben Venom. It's like, where does it stop here? Like, it's just like, we can't think of what to do with this guy. Like, have you tried putting him in a symbiote lately? Right. Well, we did that 2 years ago. It's like, oh, you're waiting way too long. He's got to get that kind of symbiote. And then, like you said, they did that Wolverine story, like a Weapon, what was it? Weapon X-Men or something like that. Where it's like a multiversal team-up of Wolverines. And, like, again, that maybe sounds fun for, like, a comic, but to be like, this is a whole series, and this is what we're doing. And what really got me, I think I talked to you about this, was this year, the whole Wolverine anniversary. And they're like, we're bringing back Sabretooth War. It's going to be this thing. What do you know? Sabretooth teams up with 50 other Sabretooths and gets an army of, I kid you not, headless Sabretooth clone drones to like go kill Wolverine. And it's like, you really couldn't. I would have rather had like a more grounded, focused like story on Wolverine and Saber. Like, to me, that's not really what's interesting about Wolverine and Sabretooth, nor is it really what's interesting about any of these characters, is having, and it's one thing if you flesh them out, but it kind of just becomes like cameo insanity of like, here's that guy, he's weird, huh? Okay, oh, here's this one. That's strange. All right, there's this guy. It's like, I don't know. And again, I think it worked in the second Spider-Verse movie because that was kind of the point. Like, you had your main characters and side ones were showing up. But if we're doing a Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly spin-off book, it's like I feel like that kind of loses what was cool about the characters. He kind of showed up, he was there, did his thing, then we move on.
I mean, do you think any of it is they're just trying to throw a bunch of different concepts at the wall to see what fans end up liking? Because wasn't Spider-Gwen introduced in the first Spider-Verse and then well received, and then that kind of split off, and now she's like a main character, everybody knows her, and like it's probably a staple. She's here to stay. Where as like, I don't know who this guy up here is with the goggles. Probably not sticking, so they can just kind of, he was in the story and then he's gone and we don't have to worry about him. But we found the one that that the fans liked, and now we're going to have a whole nother book about this character, and that just kind of gives them more fuel for.
I would think so. I think it's kind of trying to say, how can we spin this off or launch it into its own character, right? Because, and maybe they're doing that because this is going to be another episode on just, I think, the very sad state of main. Like, even your Peter Parker Spider-Man comics, to me, have gotten quite lazy and are literally just garbage, where you have Spider-Man becoming the Green Goblin, not once, but twice in a calendar year, which I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's, I wouldn't approve that in general as an idea. I'd be like, no, I'll come up with something better. But they're doing it twice. So it's like, maybe they're just like, shoot, we don't really know. Like, Spider-Verse took off, people like that, so let's make a bunch of Spider-Man, Spider-Verse comics. And and again, like I said, I think it makes your main character, and I always had that trouble with like the Flashes in some ways, like where you had them team up with all the other Flashes. I'm like, this is just kind of lame because they all do the same exact thing. Like,
true.
It's cool when you have like maybe two, or there's a baton passing or whatever, but when you literally have a whole squad of a superhero and they all have literally the same exact power, it's to me, it's just like you kind of make what made the main one cool kind of boring, and it's
watered it down.
Right. Again, unless it's like a one-off or it's doing something like they did do that. You're right with the Batman multiverse. I picked that up where he travels to like the Keaton world and the animated world and Batman Beyond and Dark Knight Returns, and it was just kind of more to me like a fun one issue though. It wasn't like the new Batman event is Batman, and like it's just like, really, I don't know. Because
I know you hated that, and I liked that Batman story where he gets like traveling through time, and you've got it's kind of multiversal, like Pilgrim Batman, Caveman Batman. I liked those. You hated it, but
it felt, I don't know, to me it was like, I don't, maybe it was just there's certain characters I think you can do that with.
Sure.
It just, to me, didn't work. Spider-Man, I think they've pulled it off okay, and
that was a problem.
Like, yeah, because I did like the first one, and then they just kind of keep going. Like, even the Spider-Man video games, they kind of teased, like, the third one might be a Spider-Verse game, and it's like, I don't really want that. Like, I'd rather just play a Peter Parker and, like, Miles Morales game without jumping to, like, here's 50 other Spider-Man you can play as. It's like, I don't know. That just, I think if that becomes the, like, go-to frame for a Spider-Man story, you're kind of trapped. Because, like, it's, like you said, it's a little hard to go back. Because what are you going to do? Just say all these guys are just going to disappear? Or, like, they're probably here for, like, even your background, you got Spider-Ham and Symbiote Spider-Ham. Yeah. Like, really? Like, again, don't know the context of the story.
Sure.
But I don't know. I think that's kind of the risk when you start introducing all these, like, variants or alternate takes on a character. And you can just kind of, to me, sort of lose. And I think that's what happened in, like, the 90s with the Clone Saga with Spider-Man, where they introduced it. And it's like, oh, that's crazy. He's got a clone. And then it was like, oh, well, he's got a clone too. And it's like, oh, actually, this guy's a clone of the clone. And then you're like, dude, like, it was a cool idea at first, but then it started making money. So, because that's what happened. It was going to be a 6-month arc. And then it took off, and it turned into, like, almost like 2.5, maybe 3-year story where they were just making it up. Like, there's clearly, at this point, to me in comics, there's no overarching plot to, like, where the Spider-Verse is going, or, like, okay, this is going to culminate in this. It's just kind of like, well, we'll see where this goes. Which I think you kind of run the risk of, just, like, having these sort of mid-tier stories that just don't go anywhere and never really have a satisfying conclusion or lead anywhere.
And I think that's kind of what I was starting to feel with Spawn, and because he's got kind of the Spawn verse going on, where you got Gunslinger Spawn and Medieval Spawn, and like there was just a bunch of them. as like background characters, but like it felt, because I read about
Yeah.
I don't know, several years of spawns, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna make it to 350, but it just kind of felt like it was like we're just creating this universe, dropping in new characters just for the sake of like getting one more issue. And there, it didn't really feel like, it felt like it was building, but even like the culmination of like, oh, this is the person that's sitting on Hell's throne. It was cool, but it wasn't like, it didn't, the build up, I don't think led to the culmination, which it's not even over. Like it's just now we're continuing with the Spawn universe. And I'm just like, I don't want to keep dragging through like issue by issue just to get to the next, to just keep reading more spawns. So I don't know. And they just started the new Spawn.
Well, I think for me at that point, I'm just like, I'm not even going to try. I'm sorry.
Right.
I mean, I read some of the early ones, and to me, that seems more what I enjoyed. Like, there's some 90s cheesiness to it, but it's like, it's fun because it's focused on, like, Al Simmons and what he's doing, and it's not necessarily like, to me, when you get into sort of this... I think many comic stories can tend to get too big for their own good. And I think that is kind of the risk and reward, because you can do really cool stuff with comics and take it in cool directions. But if you're not careful, I think you can totally just get lost down in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, what do we do now?
I do think I like the newer Spawn stuff better than the old Spawn stuff. Like, Volume 1 is fun just because it's like Origins. Like, this is the first stuff with Spawn. But the newer stuff is cooler, I think. But yeah, same with like Spiderverse. Like, I haven't even read much of it just because I'm like, how much am I going to have to even read to understand the entire...
I think you can... You said Spiderverse?
Yeah.
I think the first arc is pretty good because they weave in like Morlun, who was kind of a random, like, 16th century looking vampire guy that wanted to eat Spider-Man. You're like, that's kind of weird. So they introduce it as like, he's from this family, like the Inheritors, and they're like this framework of like, they hunt the spider totem. So I think it made sense and it worked. But yeah, if it had ended at that, I'd have been like, okay, cool. Maybe you get a little Spider-Gwen, a couple others, but yeah, I remember I was very excited like 10 years ago when that came out. But now, if they were like Spider-Verse, it's just like, even when you see all the variants of the characters teaming up, doesn't really even interest me anymore.
Yeah, I get that.
So those are our thoughts on the overall superhero versus getting a little out of control. But you let us know, are we wrong? Should we be continuing with the Spider-Verses, the Batman versus... I don't know what other verses we can get, Dakota. There's already multiple Aunt Mays, so I'm still waiting for the Aunt May verse big summer event. But let us know, are they getting out of control? Are there more characters you'd like to see with this kind of storytelling? And as always, please be liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting. We respond to all the comments. And until next time, stay strong.